Welcome everybody back to Midweek Meetings. This is Ep.6. I'm KnockdownNico with the cam. I'm a little bit scuffed. I had to evacuate for the Hurricane Milton, but the grind never stops. I'm here with Pr3ssix as well.
What's up, everyone?
So yeah, this episode may be a little scuffed. Obviously, you can probably tell by the mic quality and the camera quality, but the show must go on. Week 5 is officially in the books. What do we think of the games? We'll get into them, but we'll get into some games. We'll get into some spicy headlines, especially some that dropped today. Then we'll go over our predictions, our auto lock, fantasy football, and I'll have to come up with a fun question on the fly because I didn't think of one this week. But what do you think of the games this week?
I thought the games were pretty good overall. A lot of exciting games, a lot of close games. Um, it was just a fun viewing experience this week, I feel like, compared to last week. It's just fun.
I agree. I agree. We're going to start off with probably the greatest Thursday night football game we're going to see this year. Atlanta come back. They come back and win in overtime. Now, did Atlanta get a missed face mask call that could have had the Bucks win the game? But the Bucks defense was awful that game as well.
Yeah, that face mask definitely would have changed the outcome of the game, but still, the Bucks should have won that game. They kind of sold. But I like what I'm seeing from Kirk Cousins. He's looking better as the season progresses. He's finding those targets. He's feeding Drake London and Darnell Mooney. And their passing game has been really good, especially last week. We saw that. And whenever Kirk Cousins is hitting the swag surf on Thursday Night Football, you know that he's feeling it. So he's back.
Yeah, that was a great performance by him. I think he had over 500 passing yards, which is insane. They almost I wouldn't say choked, but Darnell Mooney dropped that wide open pass. Potentially could have been a touchdown on that pass as well. But the Bucks defense was just bad, especially against the pass. I mean, they let Kirk Cousins do whatever they wanted, and that is that's that. I think they did miss a face mask call in Atlanta. I don't know if that would have changed the game. Maybe they get a first down and they're able to ice the game with that. But yeah, I mean, the refs overall this entire week didn't seem good across all games. So I don't know if you can't really say that, the refs sold the game because the Bucks gave up 500 passing yards. Like you can't have that and win a football game. All right, we're going to move on to I'm going to combine this into one, but Ravens and Bengals go to OT. That game was nuts. And we also had the Jaguars and the Texans have game-winning field goals as well.
Yeah, that was a very interesting slate of games there. The Ravens Bengals game, I was watching that game. Man, that was a fun game to watch. Joe Burrow had 5 passing touchdowns. The Bengals, they almost had it, fell through their fingers. Um, that overtime was wild too. I mean, we had the Lamar Jackson fumble into the Joe Burrow interception, and then the Derrick Henry run that sealed the game. That was exciting. I'm not gonna lie, I was rooting for that game to get done so I could watch the Packers because it was taking up. I missed like the first drive of the Packers game, but it's all good. It was an exciting game. Jags and Texans, also a good game. Another one I want to put on here, Houston and the Bills. That also came down to a field goal. Um, Houston kicked the field goal with time expiring to win. That's another conversation there. There's a lot of questions about if the Bills did the right thing. They had the ball with a minute left in their end zone, and they threw it 3 times, and then they gave the ball right over to Houston. So there's some controversy about that. Did the Bills do the right thing? Probably not. They probably could have won if they just played for OT, but it's whatever. overall, those games were all pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even the Jaguars game as well. I was looking at through the ESPN GameCast. They threw like three straight passes, all incomplete passes as well, with like I don't remember how much time. I think it was either like it was around 4 minutes or less than 3 minutes, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, I think the Colts went down the field and either scored a touchdown or a field goal on the next drive as well. So I mean, Jaguars poor. You could say poor. Clock management. Same thing with the Bills as well. Jaguars ended up winning that game either way. The Bills lost as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just teams not being able to like I don't maybe this is why I'm not a coach, but I don't understand why, you know, if it's you're up by, whatever, 3-7 and it's like under 3 minutes or under 4 minutes and you throw the ball three straight times, all incomplete, you take no time off the clock, like I don't know, it just seems like bad clock management as well, just in general. The Ravens Bengals game though was absolutely nuts. I'm pretty sure the Bengals missed the field goal
They did,
in
yeah.
in overtime. I'm not sure if Joe Burrow threw an interception as well, but I know they missed the field goal. I mean, that was crazy, that game. And Derrick Henry, so close to hitting 100 yards, just needed like needed like 7 more yards to hit my parlay with that. So that's a little sad. But I mean, that so far is probably the game of the year. Actually, that Atlanta game and that Ravens game are probably the games of the year so far, without a doubt. All right, we'll move on to our final recap. Commanders beat down on the Browns. Two sides of this game. The Commanders, record wise, have the best record in the NFC East, but are they the best team in the NFC East? And is Deshaun Watson's time in Cleveland over?
Deshaun Watson's time in Cleveland is not over strictly because of that contract. I believe Stefanski came out and said he's planning on starting Watson again this week. And it's just like, what are you doing? I mean, sure, they gave him this big contract, guaranteed money, whatever. But he is the worst quarterback in the NFL right now. I don't think there's a single starter where I'd rather have Watson over any other starter in the NFL. And most of the backups in the NFL are better than him too. So he's holding the Browns back, and I think they just need to move on, take the loss, and they have a chance to win this season if they just make a switch at QB. I mean, we've seen Jameis, he's been very efficient, um, multiple big passing yard seasons in the NFC South, so he can definitely get it done. On the other side of the ball, the Commanders, they have looked good, but I think it's kind of hard to look past the schedule and who they played. They played the Browns, who have not been good, the Bengals, who are, although they're not looking terrible, they are still sitting at 1-4, I believe, and they played the Giants, and I forget who the other game was against, but anyways, I think their schedule has not been that
They
hard.
played Tampa Bay.
That's right. Tampa, I think I'm still missing one, but it's okay. Basically, I don't think their schedule has been that hard. I think if they play a real contender like the Chiefs, the Lions, the Vikings, I think this team is getting beat down. Their defense stats have been inflated by the bad offensives they've been playing. Their defense looked very good last week. Well, you're also playing the worst quarterback in the league, in my opinion. So, yes, they're a good team. I could see them as a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to stay on top of the NFC East. I think the NFC East is probably going to fall to Philadelphia. You got to remember, Philadelphia already had their bye this week. So, they're like kind of a game back just because they haven't played a game. So I think Philadelphia will definitely come back, and I think they're going to be the winners in the NFC East. And I see the Commanders maybe getting a wild card spot.
Yeah, we'll go over it in our predictions, but I'm almost certain they play the Ravens
Yeah,
this
they do.
week in Baltimore. So Yeah, I mean, they're looking really good, but like you said, they played some not so great teams. I'm really curious to see how they match up against Baltimore when they play Philly. Whether or not, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith are healthy, that'll be another question as well. And even when they play Dallas, I'm really curious to see how they'll match up against those teams. But I mean, Jane Daniels seems to be getting his stride with Terry McLaurin, especially on those deep passes. Austin Eckler, outside of, a little bit of not having the greatest speed, is breaking off huge runs. Brian Robertson Jr. is doing his thing as well. I mean, they look solid. The defense, I mean, the defense isn't the greatest, but if they keep putting up points, the offense, it doesn't matter how bad the defense is, as long as the offense can keep going down, scoring points, and scoring enough points to where the defense just needs to force a turnover or two, or have one big play like a sack or something, and get the win, and that is able to make them get the win. Now for Cleveland, I don't know how much time you can. I don't know how many more games you can give Deshaun Watson. Like he hasn't. He was okay in a couple games last year. He hasn't looked good really in any games this year outside of maybe the Giants game, and I think they lost that as well. So it's like, at what point do you either put in Jameis, or maybe they're purposely keeping him in to tank so they can go draft like a Quinn Ewers or even a Shador Sanders, maybe someone like that. That could be a play that Cleveland's making, but I mean, I think I've said this time and time again. The defense isn't that bad for Cleveland. It's just the offense is so poor. The defense is on the field so much, and they get tired too quick because they're on the field too much. The defense, and they're giving up big plays, and they're giving up probably more points than they should be. Anyways, those are the recaps for the games this week. I do want to throw out that Seattle Giants game. There were some questions speculating on whether or not the long snapper got held down on the blocked field goal. Even from a non-biased standpoint, I do feel like that should have been a penalty. And then Derek Carr also went out with a oblique injury in the Saints-Chiefs game. And look, I think we're getting to that point with the Saints every year. They start off a little hot, couple, 2-3 games in, but they're dwindling. They're starting to dwindle as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The Saints, I don't know if they're going to be able to manage without Carr. I think they're planning on starting Spencer Rattler, from what I've heard. I think Jake Hayner is not even supposed to be starting next week. So, even though I think he looked pretty good at the end of that game, actually, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, he was making plays. He had that really good throw to Shaheed, and I mean, that just went through his hands. Um, but from what
He
I've
had that
heard,
good throw to Olave too, which
yeah,
it went through Olave's hands as well. So, I mean, he had a couple good balls, but I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Spencer Rattler play over Jake Hayner. I'm going to be honest.
yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard Rattler's playing. We've seen the inconsistencies in college for Rattler. Maybe the NFL is his time to shine. Maybe he can turn it around. Well, but that'll be interesting to see how the Saints develop. I think they're gonna have a rough time, especially with their schedule going ahead here.
Moving on to our headlines, a couple of big headlines. Starting out with probably the biggest headline of the week: the Jets fire Robert Saleh. People are saying it is a year too late. I've also seen some rumors that Robert Saleh was potentially going to fire Nathaniel Hackett this week as well before he got fired. I also seen some rumors that he was escorted out of the building by security and didn't even get to address his players on the fact that he was fired. And a little just random fun fact, he's making, I think, 20, like 18, 20K a day, I think, from the Jets for the next 2 years.
Yeah, the Saleh situation is interesting. Um, you know, it didn't make much sense to me, to be honest. Like, if you were gonna fire him, you should have fired him at the end of the last season. You're already 5 games into the season, and interim head coaches don't normally work out, and you're probably not gonna make the playoffs at this point. The whole point of going out and getting Aaron Rodgers was to have a team who could compete for a year or two, maybe win a Super Bowl. But Rodgers isn't going to be around much longer, and this offensive talent just seems like it's going to be wasted here. I mean, it's so confusing. I don't know where it comes from, to be honest. I've seen Rodgers say that he was blindsided by this, even though some are speculating that he had a part in the firing. I lean
I did see
towards
that as well.
I think probably not. There's a video of him hugging Roger Sala in the tunnel last week after the game that I saw surfacing. So I don't I don't know where to stand on this one. I just feel like it was the wrong move, to be honest.
I feel like this opens more holes than it closed in a sense. I mean, the defense wasn't bad, right? The
Yeah.
defense wasn't bad at all. It was the offense that was always the problem, and it was a problem, with Zach Wilson, with the rotating quarterbacks, and seems not so great with Aaron Rodgers right now. But I mean, looking at his tenure in New York, I don't think Robert Saleh was the best coach or the best hire, but his defense was on point most of the time with the talent and the players on it. There was always that offense that was the issue. And right, he's a defensive guy, he's not an offensive guy. But I don't think whether it was Rodgers, had to roll in it or not. But Nathaniel Hackett is not the answer for an offensive coordinator. Like maybe for like Pee Wee football it is, but like for the NFL, it's just no. I don't know why Nathaniel Hackett is still here. Maybe they still fire Nathaniel Hackett as well, but I feel like you know with these rumors as well, he's not able to address his team. They pretty much escort him out of the building. Like it seems like there was some bad blood between maybe him and the GM with the ownership or something, and they just cold turkeyed it. But it's gonna be just bad overall because if you're applying for a head coach job and you're seeing this, if it doesn't work out, like if you go 2 seasons and you're not doing good, are you worried that you're just going to get, even for guaranteed money, just get, essentially just cold stoned you know, and that's that? Or like, are you going to be able to even, address your players or, you know, whatever it may be? So I just feel like there's too many questions that aren't answered that need to be answered. And we'll see if Robert Saleh says anything about it. And we'll see if they fire anyone else, especially Nathaniel Hackett, because he's bad.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Rogers is going on the McAfee show tomorrow, so maybe we'll get some answers from that. That'll be interesting to see what he says about that tomorrow. I believe it's 10:30, not sure.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
And the thing about Hackett is Rogers loves Hackett. I don't think if the Jets want to stick with Rogers, I don't think Hackett is gone this week. I think they hold Hackett out for at least the rest of the season. And this is why the firing is so confusing to me, is because Saleh had no part in the lack of offensive production in my mind. It's all on the offensive coordinator and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers had 3 picks last week. None of that is coaching errors. That's just him making bad decisions, really. And so there has to be some internal conflict that was. It's not public yet. It's got to be something going on in the clubhouse that we don't know about because otherwise this fire might be the most confusing thing of all time.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe they make Nathaniel Hackett the head So that may be the most dumb thing I think
Saw how that
I've
worked out in Denver.
seen or could even hear. But it wouldn't surprise me, especially if Aaron Rodgers likes him. Maybe they promote him, but I don't know. Like, well, I think this is just going to be we'll have to wait and see what everyone says on every side, and we're not going to know we're not going to know the full issue on it until a long time in the future on some random podcast, or maybe even never.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. So the initial thing that I saw was Rashid Rice was going to be out for the season. But this Adam Schefter tweet says, I'll sum it up, but after consulting with doctors, there's a lot of optimism that Rashid Rice didn't suffer a knee injury as significant as first believed. He's going on some more tests. Well, I guess today is Tuesday, but today to determine the extent of the injury, but there's a chance the recovery time could be much shorter than they initially thought. So, the first thing I saw that he was out for the season, but now, Adam Schefter is a really credible source saying that, maybe he's not going to be out for as long as we thought. Maybe he comes back this season. So it doesn't seem like I've also seen that the Chiefs are not interested in trading for a wide receiver as well. So maybe that has something to do with the extent of his injury as well.
Yeah, what I've seen is that it's only his LCL that has been torn. So that's an interesting thing. It's not the ACL from what I've heard. So it's a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
a smaller ligament, so I guess that opens up the window a little bit. I don't think Rice is gonna come back anytime soon. Maybe we see him the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. I've also seen reports as of October 7th. Ian Rappaport said he's out for the season. So some conflicting ideas here. It looks like he's still getting second opinions. So maybe after what Adam Schefter said here Tuesday, we'll really know the whole situation there in Kansas City.
So the wonderful internet says that if your LCL is separated or torn, it can take anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks to heal. I wouldn't say they usually rush players back, but it seems like the average NFL player potentially heals, depending on the injury, a little faster sometimes than the average human being. So maybe that time's a little less. If it's at the 8 weeks, we're in week 5. That would put him at week 13. Week 12 would put him at the end of the season, essentially, right in time for the playoffs. So, you know, I guess we'll just have to see on more opinions, but there may be a chance Rice comes back at the end of the season, maybe plays 1 or 2 games, or he just comes back for the playoffs, which would be huge for the Chiefs. I mean, they beat New Orleans pretty handily with Kelsey playing good, and besides Juju Smith, dropping a slant, they seem pretty solid at wide receiver for now. So, I mean, we'll have to see. But if he comes back this year, that's going to be a huge, huge deal for the Chiefs, and probably they'll get Pacheco back at the end of the season as well. Like, they're going to be getting 2 of their arguably best offensive players outside of Mahomes back in time for the end of the season or the playoffs, and that can be huge for the three-peat for the Chiefs. Moving on to our third one, Russell Wilson is set to practice this week. I've seen something that he could play against the Raiders. I mean, Justin Fields didn't look the greatest against the Cowboys. So, I mean, if he is able to play, who are we taking? Justin Fields or Russ Wilson?
You know, I liked Fields' play against Indianapolis, he really kind of looked like different Justin Fields, kind of like what we saw in college. But as we said against Dallas, he did not look great. But I think some of it has to do with the offensive scheming. They're not really setting him up for success, I feel like. Their run game has not been great. Najee Harris isn't the greatest running back, and Warren is out. So I think their offense is just struggling here. And personally, I think they should stick with Fields. I feel like it's kind of like it's a situation where the vet is kind of like the mentor, but I think Fields is going to benefit more from playing games because he already has a little bit of experience under his belt from Chicago and this season. So he's not a rookie. He's got experience. I think he has more upside than Wilson, especially since Wilson is literally coming off an injury. So I would rather play Fields if I was the Steelers.
Yeah, we're just. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see, on his status for practice and how he does. I mean, the Steelers have Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. That pretty much sums up all you need to know about it. So, yeah, I mean, Fields hasn't played the worst. He hasn't turned the ball over a lot, which I think is good because he definitely did that in, you know, Chicago a lot as well. I feel like in Chicago, he was forced to make plays that he necessarily didn't have to take or didn't want to take. They were more risky because the defense wasn't as good. I think the defense is helping him out a significant amount, Justin Fields. Although I'm not sure if Russell Wilson plays, if Russell Wilson is any better.
Yeah.
He's not as fast. Like he's not as fast as Justin Fields. He's not as mobile as he was, with his time in Seattle. We saw how he played in Denver. It was just awful. It was just bad. I mean, that Denver team didn't help him out either. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, knowing Arthur Smith, he's going to do like some like college thing that Florida's doing. He's going to play Russell Wilson for a drive, and he's going to play Justin Fields for a drive. Like knowing Arthur Smith, he'll do some goofy concept like that. But I think it's just going to determine how Russell Wilson progresses through practice this week. It's going to determine. I'm not saying he's going to play, but I have a feeling if he's feeling 100%, he might end up playing this week against the Raiders. We kind of touched on this earlier, but Derek Carr got injured. I don't think we need to go over it into too much detail. Oblique injury. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out for, but from what it sounds like and what you said, there's potentially going to be starting Spencer Rattler this week. So he's out for at least a week. I mean, we were going back on that Derek Carr, start off extremely good and slowly decline throughout the season. So maybe he comes back from the injury and, dominates a couple games and then he hits his, decline.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's gonna be not that long. I saw like 2 to 5 weeks, so they'll get him back. But I don't know if this Saints team is really all that great. I didn't expect them to be great coming into the season, but everyone thought they were really good after those first 2 weeks. But I think they've fallen off significantly, and this car injury is just the icing on the cake. I don't think their season is gonna be anything special.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on to our last headline, which I feel like I saw a notification for this, but I didn't go in and do much detail or look at it all. Devin White got released by the Eagles. He played for the Bucks last year, and he's been inactive for the first 4 games. I'm not sure if it was due to injury or he just
He's been a
wasn't
healthy
even starting
scratch.
a healthy scratch.
Yep.
So maybe he goes back to Tampa. Maybe he goes to a different team, but I don't think he's past his prime yet, but whoever picks him up, I feel like is going to benefit a lot from him being on the team.
Yeah, it's kind of a confusing move from Philly. I mean, they literally paid him a 1-year contract this year, gave him the money, and then they let him go in 5 weeks. So I guess they just thought they had a better linebacker core and they didn't need him, so they just let him go. Yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it is. Says Jacoby Dean took over his role, had a good summer, edged him out for the starting job. But yeah, I feel like he could go back to Tampa. I'm not, potentially he goes somewhere else. Whoever signs him, though, unless they got, except maybe like the 49ers because they got Fred Warner, and maybe the Ravens. Whoever signs him, though, I feel like is going to benefit a lot from him being on the football field as long as, he plays and isn't a healthy scratch. That is all the headlines we have for this week. Moving on to our predictions as I load them up. I know I'm not. I know for a fact that I ended up my overall record. I ended up tying you again, so we're back to the same amount of wins and losses. But this week, once it loads, I went. So I'm 38 and 40 overall, and I think I went 9-5 this week. I could be mistaken
That
though,
would make sense because I went
or
5-9, so
I went 8-6
yeah,
last week actually.
I went 5-9. Pretty bad week for me.
Yep. So we're back to the same overall record. Moving into week number 6. Starting out with Thursday night football, we have San Francisco at Seattle.
I'm gonna take the Seattle Seahawks. This game's at home for Seattle, and I don't like the way the 49ers have been playing. I mean, they lost to the Cardinals, they lost to the Rams, they lost all their divisional games this year. It's not looking too good. I don't know what the problem is, to be honest. There, Jake Moody's also out. Just putting that out there. So they're without their kicker. I mean, Jordan Mason, he's been on the decline since the Minnesota game. I feel like he's not. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's shoes are hard to fill. So props to him for doing his role back there, but he's not Christian McCaffrey at the end of the day. And Debo was silent last week, and Brandon Ayuk was silent the 2 weeks before that. So this offense, in my opinion, is just not really clicking, and I think Seattle's due for a bounce back game here. Losing to the Giants at home is kind of rough. Um, so I think this is a game for them to bounce back, get that offense going again. And I think this game will come down to the Seattle defense. If the Seattle defense can execute, stop the run, I think they can win this game.
I'm taking San Francisco here. I mean, Seattle defense has been playing not so good the past couple of weeks. They just put Uchenna Nwosu on IR. Boye Mafe was, I think, confirmed Monday that he wasn't playing against San Francisco. So they're without both of their two best edge rushers, essentially. And, I mean, the defense has given up a lot of yards, given up a lot of rushing. Tariq Woolen got injured in that game as well against the Giants. I'm not sure what his status is, but if he's not in, that means I think the rookie Nathaniel Pritchett is going to play a lot more snaps. Trey Brown was awful last week against the Giants, which, I mean, if you're awful against the Giants, like that's not good. And from the San Francisco side of things, obviously they don't have Christian McCaffrey, but Deebo Samuel, for some reason, always, always just goes off against Seattle. He's got some crazy rush. He makes like some crazy touchdown catch or runs it in like on a jet sweep. George Kittle seems to always be super active, in the passing game as well against Seattle. And Brandon Ayuk's hit or miss. Obviously, they have Jordan Mason, but I think I'm taking the 49ers. Seattle hasn't been good against 49ers in a long time, and it's going to come down to turnovers. DK Metcalf turned the ball over twice in the past 2 games, and they've lost both those games. So DK Metcalf turns the ball over again. San Francisco is going to win this game. Moving on, this game is in London as well. Jaguars and the Chicago Bears are the designated home team.
I'm taking the Jaguars. They thrive in London. London's basically their second home. I feel like they play half of their games in London every year. So I just feel like this is the Jaguars game to win. Um, and I think it's a weird game because Jaguars looked pretty good last week. They were playing the Colts though. But Chicago has also looked pretty good. But I think it's an overseas game. Anything can happen. Caleb Williams hasn't played overseas yet. So I'm taking Jacksonville. And there's not much to say about that.
I'm taking Chicago. I mean, they played the Panthers last week, but they looked really good. Seems like that DJ Moore to Caleb Williams connection is coming along better. Seems like DJ Moore is also getting more routes down the field from Shane Waldron as well. And that's a style of wide receiver DJ Moore is. The Jaguars did look solid last week. Their play calling, especially at the end of that game, the clock management was abysmal. We'll have to see. Apparently, Travis Etienne. Apparently, he hurt his shoulder again in that game against who did they play last week?
They played
The Colts.
The Colts, yeah.
Yeah, against the Colts. Apparently, he hurt his shoulder again in that game, so he should be playing again. But we'll have to see how the ball carrier gets split again. But I think this Chicago defense is going to be the difference. They're better than the Colts defense. Trevor Lawrence, unless it's some deep ball to Brian Thomas Jr., hasn't been that good under pressure. And that Bears defense is low-key a little underrated. And you know how their secondary is, especially with like Kyler Gordon and Tariq Stevenson. So I'm taking Chicago, but I mean, this game can get wacky, like you said. It is an overseas game. We saw how wacky last week's game was with Minnesota and the Jets. Up next, we have Arizona at Green Bay.
Arizona looked good last week against the Niners, but they've been very inconsistent all year. I'm taking the Packers. And this is the week for the Packers offense to figure it out. They looked pretty good last week against the Rams, who aren't that strong of a team. But the Cardinals, I think, are not going to be able to keep up on defense against the Packers. Matt LaFleur is going to out-coach the Cardinals, and that's going to be what pushes Green Bay over the edge. And the Cardinals, I don't know. I don't like their defense at all. I think that's the big reason why they're going to lose this game. Josh Jacobs is going to feast against this front line for the Cardinals. They don't have anybody to stop him. This could be a good game for the Packers.
I'm taking the Packers. Well, I mean, outside of the division games, the Cardinals' defense hasn't looked that good, and this isn't a divisional game. Jordan Love has been slinging the ball as well. Outside of that, that bad pass that ended up being a pick-6. But for the most part, he's kept the football clean. Well, okay, that's probably a lie, but he's making some big plays down the field. It's Tucker Craft seems like a big part of that offense as well. Especially with Christian Watson being out. And yeah, I mean, this could be a shootout type game, but I don't know. The Cardinals won. Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't really in that mix, wasn't really too active that game. James Conner's going to do his thing no matter what. He's been on fire, rushing the ball and just all purpose yards in general. But like you said, they're too inconsistent. And it seems like the inconsistency, especially against playing non divisional opponents, is going to bite them in the foot this game. Up next, we have Indianapolis at Tennessee.
I believe Anthony Richardson is going to start this week, but I'm not sure on the status on Jonathan Taylor. So, if the Colts don't have Jonathan Taylor, I'm taking the Titans. And that's the reason I'm taking the Titans right now. If something changes and Taylor's playing this week, I'll switch to the Colts. But I like the matchup for the Titans defense. They've been really good against the run. Um, their secondary is not bad either. And I think they're going to make Anthony Richardson pay if he's playing. And I think the Titans offense, look, they had the bye last week, so they had a chance to talk things over, figure out their offensive schemes, and I think they're to come out firing. They got to get Calvin Ridley involved. They got to get DeAndre involved. Tony Pollard, they got to get him involved. I think this offense is the key, and I think the Titans are going to win this game.
I agree. I'm taking the Titans as well. They're coming off the bye week. Like you said, I think that's going to help them a lot this game. We'll probably get a goofy Will Levis meme again, especially if he starts and plays. But, they're susceptible to big plays, the Colts. The defense, we saw it against Jacksonville. Obviously DeAndre Hopkins is a little older, isn't explosive as he once was, but I wouldn't surprise me if a Tajay Spears, especially kind of like screen pass or something, goes for monstrous yards, because that the Colts are they're prone to giving up big, just lapses in their defense. And I think if Anthony Richardson's coming back, I think especially he'll make a mistake. That Titans defense is underrated. It gets overshadowed though by that offense and Will Levis just being a meme. So I'm taking Tennessee. I know the majority, I think, are taking the Colts, but something about that bye week and then facing a quarterback that's coming off an injury is going to it just adds up for the Titans, I see. Up next, we have Houston at New England.
I'm taking the Houston Texans. The New England Patriots right now, they cannot find a way to win. Their offense has been run heavy, and when they're down by 10 in the fourth quarter, they just can't run the ball, and their passing game is non existent. So I'm taking the Texans here. They didn't look great last week, but I think they'll be able to get it done. Joe Mixon's supposed to come back this week, I believe, so that'll definitely help out their offense, open up the passing game, I think, even more. Get those playmakers involved. Tank Dell hasn't been involved really this season, so I'd like to see them get involved in this game, especially since they're going against Christian Gonzalez. He'll be probably on Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs the whole game. I'm predicting a big game for Tank Dell here, and yeah, the Patriots don't stand a chance in this one.
I'm taking the Houston Texans as well. Yeah, Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are questionable as of right now. So maybe they get one of them back. Maybe they get both of them back. I think it's better if they get both of them back. Nico Collins is also questionable with that hamstring injury, I want to say. So I'm not sure if he's going to play. I think he's week to week. So even if he doesn't play, I don't think that's going to matter. They got Tank Dell, we saw last year. He can step up. Stephon Diggs is going to step up. They'll probably be, I feel like Stroud, if Nico Collins is out, is going to be a little more active with his tight end as well. So expect Dalton Schultz to be a little more active, especially if Nico Collins is out. And it looks like Joe Mixon, I think they're going to evaluate him this week. So he may or may not play. I think he's still 50-50. And then Damian Pierce, no real update. It just says he's questionable. So he might play. But even if he doesn't, Cam Akers has been okay with running the ball. They can run the ball with Tank Dell if they need to on some wide receiver sweeps, but I just don't see this being competitive, especially if they jump out to a 14-0 lead. The whole New England's game plan is to have a close game so they can run the ball, control the time of possession. If that gets away from them in the first quarter, especially, it's just going to be a lost cause for the Patriots. So I'm taking the Texans. Up next, we have Tampa Bay and New Orleans.
I'm taking the Tampa Bay Bucks to win this game. We talked about the QB situation in New Orleans. It's not looking good for New Orleans. Um, Although I will say the Bucks' run defense hasn't been great. So if the Saints have a chance in this game, it's going to be through the run game, through Kamara, mixing in Taysom Hill. We probably see Taysom Hill this week if he's back from injury. I'm not sure what his injury status is. Um, but yeah, the Bucks. I mean, their offense looked fine against Atlanta. It was really their defense that didn't hold up their end of the stick there. Um, but yeah, I see the Bucks taking this one. I don't think the Saints are gonna put up a fight like the Falcons did. It'll be an easier matchup for the defense. Yeah, taking the Bucks.
I'm taking the Bucks as well, especially if Derek Carr doesn't play. I think it's going to be rough for New Orleans. Yeah, I mean, New Orleans didn't look great against Kansas City, and I mean, the Bucks defense didn't look great against Atlanta, but I have more confidence in the Bucks offense producing than the Saints offense producing even against a rougher defense. If this game goes into a shootout for some reason, and I don't think Derek Carr is playing, so I don't expect it to, but if it does, I still think Baker and the Bucks are going to get the edge, especially if Baker is the last one to touch the ball in the game. So I'm taking the Bucks. Moving on to our next game, we have Cleveland at Philadelphia.
We talked about the weakness of this Cleveland team. As long as Deshaun Watson is the starting quarterback, which I believe Stefanski is still riding with him for week 6, I mean, this will be an easy week for the Eagles, I think. I mean, Saquon, fresh off the bye, that's going to be scary. And I don't know what the status of A.J. Brown and Devontae, but I imagine they probably get one, if not both of them back here. So yeah, that's a tough matchup for the Browns defense even. And I mean the Eagles, I mean they might not even have to play defense. They might just have to sit on the sideline. I saw this thing as we're filming this about Deshaun Watson. He is more let me read it real quick. He has more settled lawsuits than touchdown passes since being traded to the Browns. So if that tells you anything, that's why I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm taking the Eagles as well. To answer your question, Devonta Smith is questionable, I think, as well. Yeah, he's still questionable. There hasn't been any update on him, I don't think. A.J. Brown is questionable as well as of 14 hours ago. I mean, if anything, I think Devonta Smith comes back. It's been, 2 weeks since it'll be 2 weeks since his
Yeah.
concussion, or maybe 3 weeks. So I feel like he'll be back, but Yeah, I mean, like you said, Saquon may just take over this game, and as long as Jalen Hurts didn't turn the football over 3, 4, 5 times, I think it was going to be a pretty easy win for the Philly, or not the Phillies, the Eagles, who at times can have a really solid defense, and especially that defensive line, they get some pressure on Deshaun Watson. He's going to try to do something great, some sort of Mahomesy magic type play at some point in time. He's going to maybe fumble or throw a bad interception as well. So it's just not going to be any sort of game, especially it being in Philadelphia as well. I mean, yeah, I don't have confidence in that Cleveland offense, and I kind of feel bad for their defense that they have to put up with this. Up next, we have the Commanders at the Ravens.
Despite the Commanders' success in the past few weeks, I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens. Look, this Lamar Jackson Derrick Henry combo is unstoppable. They're gonna run over this Commanders defense. I believe it's in Baltimore too, which is just even more of an advantage. Um, yeah, this game is not gonna be close in my opinion. The Ravens are one of the tougher defenses that Jaden Daniels is gonna face this year, so this will be a real test for him. He's looked good, but I think this week will show how he truly ranks among all the other quarterbacks. And yeah, this is a week for the Baltimore Ravens to go out and get a dub.
I agree. I'm taking the Ravens as well. It doesn't seem like Jane Daniels has had his welcome to the NFL moment yet, unless you count that that week one game against the Bucks. But I don't think that counts. I think this is going to be a game where it's like, welcome to the NFL, buddy. I mean, that Ravens defense is good. It struggled at times, like it did last week. They gave a lot of points, but I think this is good. And plus, Jane Daniels is really he's very similar to Lamar Jackson in a way, where he likes to run a lot, scramble, get outside the pocket and stuff. And the Ravens defense practices against that every day. So I think they'll have a good game plan going in to this game, being able to contain Jane Daniels. And as long as they don't give up a lot of rushing yards to Brian Robinson or Austin Eckler, I think they can control the wide receivers that the Commanders have. And I'm taking the Ravens. All right, up next, we have Chargers at Broncos.
I'm taking the Chargers here. They're fresh off the bye. They got a game plan. Herbert is gonna be healthy, hopefully. Even though the Broncos have looked good, 3-2, not the toughest competition. Um, Even with their win over the Raiders, I mean, they had a lot of help from that defense, especially in the secondary. But I think the Chargers are gonna beat the Broncos on the ground. I think J.K. Dobbins is gonna come back. He's gonna be fresh set of legs. They're gonna be running all over Denver. And I think the Chargers defense is going to be able to keep up with Bo Nix in that offense. They still are not great. The run game in Denver is almost non-existent. Um, I mean, they looked a little better last week, but they were also facing the Raiders, who were out Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby, so no defensive line basically for the Raiders. And I don't think the Broncos have proven themselves, and the Chargers will be a test, but I think the Chargers are going to win this game.
I'm taking the Broncos. I mean, they had a big win against the Raiders last week. The Chargers are coming off a bye week, though, but I'm just not confident. Look, if Denver can contain the run of J.K. Dobbins and I think Gus Edwards, who's the backup, I don't see them. Like, I just don't have confidence in their passing game. I don't have it's not Herbert I don't have confidence in. It's the wide receivers I don't have confidence in. I mean, you have Josh Palmer, you have Christian, I'm sorry, Quentin Johnston, and you have a rookie, Lad McConkey. And I mean, I just don't. If it's going to be all, this game is all going to be about containing the run. Can Denver contain the run? I think Bo Nix can do enough to win a football game. He's proved before. He proved against the Jets with awful stats that he can do just enough to get a win. I think this is the type of game, same type of game. He's going to do just enough to get the win. But the story of this game is going to be if can the Broncos do good against that Chargers run game? If they can, I think it's going to be the Broncos who I'm taking. But if they are not good against that run game, especially in the first half, I think the Chargers will end up taking the win, unfortunately. Moving on, we have Pittsburgh at the Raiders.
The Raiders are in a weird situation here. They're without Devontae Adams probably for the rest for forever actually. Their run game's questionable. Zamir White was injured last week. The replacement didn't look too great in Alexander Madison, kind of what we saw in Minnesota. And their QB position's up for grabs. Aiden O'Connell came in that game against Denver, and there's been no comment on who's starting against the Steelers here. So all that being said, I'm taking the Steelers. I know we talked about is it Fields or Wilson this week. I think they stick with Fields this week, and I think Max Crosby. I don't know his status, but Wilkins is out again this week, I believe. So that's just a good way for the Steelers to get their run game going. And I'd like the Steelers to be more creative on offense, throw in some screens. I mean, they haven't done much other than like slants or like deep balls. I feel like Steelers offense has not been great. Those deep balls are not connecting, and I think if you throw in some screens, get creative in the run game, this will be an easy win for the Steelers. Their defense matches up very well against this Raiders offense, who has no explosive weapons really anymore. I mean, they got Trey Tucker, who's kind of their down the field guy, but I mean, Steelers should have no problem against this Raiders team.
According to ESPN, Max Crosby his status is set as active, so I'm going to assume he's playing this week.
Sounds
But
like
I'm taking the Steelers. You hit every point. I think with what you said, the Raiders QB position is up for grabs. The run game isn't good. They're without Devontae Adams, and I don't think it matters who starts for the Steelers, whether it's Fields or Wilson. The Steelers are going to win this game anyway. Even if either quarterback, whichever one plays, doesn't have the greatest game, that defense is solely going to carry them. But this is probably going to be like another 26-6 win, I think. I mean, we don't even know who's starting for Las Vegas. Could be Aiden O'Connell. We've seen him start last year. Had some mixed results. Gardner Minshew hasn't been doing good, obviously, which is why he got benched last week. So, I mean, they've got too many problems in Vegas right now. Also, Antonio Pierce got fined by the NCAA or something. I think that was something as well. So he's got something going on as well. Head coach. I mean, it's just a mess in Las Vegas overall. So I'm taking Pittsburgh. I mean, it should be pretty easy for them, even if Max Crosby does play for the Raiders. Up next, we have Detroit at Dallas.
I looked up the matchup history against these teams because, Detroit's been a great team and Dallas has not been. But when I look up the matchup history, the Lions have not beat the Cowboys since 2013 in the regular season. So for that reason, I'm taking the Cowboys. It's at home for the Cowboys. Yes, the Lions are coming off a bye week. They're going to be fresh. Um, I think they're still without Parsons this week. Lawrence, I'm not sure what his status is. So maybe the run defense isn't great, although it seemed decent against Najee, who's not the best running back, but they were still able to contain him for the most part. But I think the Cowboys are going to be able to win this game on offense. Dowdle looked good against the Steelers, in my opinion. I think he's kind of earned that RB1 spot in that locker room. And so with him, hopefully get some production out of him. But I like CD to run all over this Lions team. Tolbert looked good last week against the Steelers, whose defense is pretty good. So I think even in the absence of Brandon Cooks, who's on IR, this this offense is pretty solid. Um, I think they're definitely the underdogs here, but I'm going based off history. They're keeping that streak alive. Haven't beat them in 10 years. It's gonna continue to be that way.
So as of October 2nd, Demarcus Lawrence was placed on injured reserve.
Oh, rough.
Marshawn Neeland, a defensive end. This is as of October 7th. Mike McCarthy told reporters he will undergo knee surgery and miss 4 to 6 weeks. They have a cornerback that is questionable, and Micah Parsons is also questionable. And they also today put Deron Bland on injured reserve for a foot injury. So this doesn't change my pick anyway. I was going to pick the Lions anyway, but they got some big injuries on defense, the Cowboys, and the Lions are coming off a bye week, and they're coming off that win against Seattle as well. And you could say the momentum got killed because of the bye week, but I'm going to say it doesn't. And I think they're going to continue that into Dallas. They're going to beat Dallas. I mean, the run game. I feel like the run game is going to be a big part of this game. The two-headed monster of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery mixed in with a little play action for Amon-Ra and Jameson. I think this is going to be a solid team win for Detroit. Obviously, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, even Jalen Tolbert, who played solid, are always a threat. I'm not really threatened by their run game down. I don't think Detroit is either. They have one of the best run defenses in the NFL anyway. So I think it's going to come down to how much pressure do they get on Dak Prescott, how many sacks do they get on Dak Prescott, and can the Cowboys defense, with all those injuries, stop the Detroit offense? And I'm going to say no. So I'm taking the Lions. Up next, we have Atlanta at Carolina.
I'm taking the Falcons. They looked good last week against the Bucks. Um, I like what they're doing on offense. Still wish they would get Bijan more involved. He has not been the guy that everyone has hoped for in Atlanta, but that offense still looks good. Um, Atlanta defense should be able to handle Carolina offensively. You know, Chuba's been pretty good. Last week was kind of a down week for the Panthers, but they were playing one of the best defenses in the league. I will give them that. Still, I think this Atlanta Falcons offense is way better than the Carolina Panthers defense, and that's going to be the main reason why the Atlanta Falcons are going to win this game.
I agree. I'm taking the Falcons. I mean, Kirk Cousins is due for 500 yards against the Bucks, which you could say have a better overall defense than the Panthers. Look, I don't think he throws for 500 against this team of Carolina, but he could throw for another 400 and 3 touchdowns. That's not out of reach. Carolina gave up a lot of yards to, Caleb Williams. They gave up a huge amount of. They gave up, I think, almost 100 yards to DeAndre Swift. So Bijan could have a big game as well on the ground. He's due for a big game. He's been struggling, but I think he's due for a big game sooner or later. And I mean, I guess it's just going to depend on what version of Andy Dalton we get. We get, week 2 Andy or week 3 Andy Dalton, or are we going to get, you know, week the last week's version of Andy Dalton, who was awful. So, I mean, I don't think there's a real choice anyway. The Atlanta Falcons are going to win this game. All right, moving on to our Sunday night football game. Surprisingly, this is a Sunday night football game. We have Cincinnati at the Giants.
At first looks, I really wanted to take the Giants here. I'm gonna be honest. I like what the Giants have been able to accomplish. They've been competitive in every single game this season except that first game against Minnesota. They were competitive against Washington, who has one of the best offenses right now. They beat Cleveland, only lost to Dallas by 5. I mean, and then they beat Seattle last week. And I think their defense showed that they can play. But I think the Bengals are going to win this game. At the end of the day, it's Joe Burrow. He threw for 5 touchdowns last week. And T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were both going off against the Ravens defense of all defenses. So I don't think the Giants defense is going to be too much for the Bengals to handle. So I'm taking the Giants. And I'm not sure what Malik's neighbor's status is, but I don't think Singletary's playing this week. They're both questionable. Either way, those are
Yeah,
big weapons for New York who are up in the air. And this Bengals defense hasn't been good, but without those weapons, I don't think they stand a chance. So I'm taking the Bengals.
yeah. Singletary and Malik Neighbors are both questionable. Big loss to the New York Giants. Oh, never mind. That was from September. Gargano, I think, is still on IR, so
Yeah, he is.
that's a big loss for them. I'm taking Cincinnati as well, though. Like their their defense is bad. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. But I don't think it's bad enough to where the New York Giants are going to score 35 plus points against them, especially without Malik Neighbors. And we saw last week, Joe Burrow. They should have won last week. Joe Burrow put them in a position to win. They missed a field goal. I don't think that's on Joe Burrow. That's on Evan McPherson. But Joe Burrow is capable any given day any week of the NFL season to put up 38, 40 points. And, they can do it again this week. Jamar Chase can go off. T. Higgins can go off. So I don't think, even they do have a bad defense, I don't think the Giants have enough firepower on offense to keep up with a high scoring game. So I'm taking the Bengals on this game. Our Monday night football game as well. We got the Bills, the Bills at the Jets.
This is a tough one. Um, I think it really comes down to there's no more Salah, so what are the Jets gonna look like? I don't think the Jets are gonna be able to beat the Bills and Josh Allen. Josh Allen has looked good this year, although he did. There's a lot of confusion about his injury last week. There was some speculation he got taken in to be checked out in the medical tent for a concussion, but he was saying his ankle's hurt. So weird situation there, but that's besides the point. I believe Shakir will be back this week. They're getting some big names back on offense or on defense too. I believe Ed Oliver's supposed to be back this week. Taron Johnson, their starting cornerback, is supposed to be back this week, I think, who they were all missing in that matchup against Houston. And I think this should be an easy win for the Bills at the end of the day. This Jets team is just such a question mark right now. I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe the Jets come out and they ball out without Salah. I don't know, but I don't think that's likely to happen this week. So I'm taking the Bills.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking the Bills as well. Yeah, Shakir is questionable. Same thing with Ed Oliver. I think they both play though. Yeah, I I do genuinely think this firing of Robert Saleh is going to overshadow the Jets and this specific game just in general. I don't know who their interim head coach is going to be. They haven't announced it yet, but I think it's not going to matter. I think Josh Allen's going to do his thing. I think this is going to be a close game. Don't get me wrong. Maybe like 20-17, somewhere around there. But or it's going to be a blowout for the Bills. I don't. It's going to be one of those two. But the Jets' offense has been so inconsistent. Sometimes they're doing really good. Sometimes they're being absolute horrible. So, and now you're without a head coach. I don't know. Maybe this gives Rodgers more freedom to do whatever types of plays he does. But I don't know. Brees Hall hasn't looked good the past couple of games. Garrett Wilson has looked good, but like if they're able to lock up Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall's not having a good game, who do we got? We got an old Alan Lazard who we know how much Rodgers wants to target Alan Lazard. So, Aaron Rodgers has been prone to making mistakes this season. So I'm taking the Bills. I mainly do think this Robert Saleh firing is going to completely overshadow the Jets this game, and it's going to be in New York, or it's going to be in MetLife Stadium, I should say. But you know, give it 2 drives. I'm calling it. Give it 2 drives, especially if it's 2 3 and out. They're going to start booing. Jets fans are going to start booing 100%. Anyways, those are our predictions for the week. Moving on to our auto lock for the week. Who do you have?
My auto lock for this week is gotta be. Hmm. I think it's gotta be the Eagles against the Browns, man. I mean, I might pick every team against the Browns as my auto lock. Oh, actually, no. I'm taking Houston against the Patriots. What am I saying? The Patriots have just been awful, man. I mean, especially if Joe Mixon's back this week, this game won't be close. The Patriots are getting stomped every week. They lost to the Miami without Tua, bro. Like, who is this team anymore? I don't even know. They're trash though. So I'm taking the Texas.
My auto lock for this week is going to be Atlanta over Carolina. I think Atlanta keeps their momentum. I'm doubt swinging. Kirk Cousins is another dominant game. Yeah, and I feel like we're going to get the Panthers that we saw last week as well, which is unfortunate for Panthers fans. But hey, it's okay. Robert Tepper's going to draft another quarterback for you guys, so do not worry. Do not worry at all. Ooh. Moving on to fantasy football, and I was just looking. First off, I absolutely dominated this game. I dominated this game, man. I had 169 points. I'm sorry, 168.36 points. I mean, it also does help when my opponent only has 4 people that actually play. Anthony Richardson didn't play, and he had 3 players on bye weeks. But I don't think even if he had a full roster, he was beating me anyway.
My fantasy team, it was a hard week. I had both Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. Gibbs was on a bye. I mean, Jonathan Taylor was out. I wasn't expecting the win, but Chris Godwin and DK Metcalf did not help me out at all. My top wide receiver was Wandale Robinson last week. Not a great week for me overall. I think I scored around 110 points ish, 109.66 to be exact. But I think it's a bounce back week. I'm playing someone who currently has no tight end and also has Devin Singletary and Aaron Jones. I'm not sure if Jones is going to play. Maybe Singletary does, but I don't think Jones is playing. So I think I got the advantage there. And hopefully Jonathan Taylor comes back this week. Sermon wasn't a terrible replacement for me. That's who I picked up in his absence. He got me 18 points, so pretty solid. Um, my waiver wires for this week, I'll just go ahead and put them out there. I'm trying to get Tank Bigsby, and I'm dropping Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford is gonna lose his touches in this backfield. Uh, he's already losing them. He split carries with Deontay Foreman and Nick Chubb's coming back. I don't want any part in that offense anymore. Another one, Juju Smith-Schuster. I doubt I'm gonna get this one. But I'm trying to add Juju Smith-Schuster for Jacoby Myers. It looks like Juju's gonna be that guy in Kansas City because they're not gonna go out and get anyone. So until Rice comes back, he's a good option. And then I'm also looking to pick up the Falcons defense. I had the Commanders last week against a bad Browns team. They did me well for 1 week, but they're not going to do me well against Baltimore. So I got to move on. Picking up the Falcons defense against Carolina if I can get it. And those are my waivers for this week.
I'm projected to lose this week as of right now. I have to put Amon-Ra back in. I have to make a tough decision. I think I'm going to put him in. I think I'm going to keep Darnell Mooney in because he is playing Carolina. I think I like that matchup a little more than Shaheed against Tampa, especially we're not sure what quarterback's even starting really for the Saints. My kicker is also on a bye, and I also just noticed that someone dropped Kareem Hunt. So I switched on my waiver wires a little bit. So hopefully my first. Ooh, wait. Okay. So I'm dropping Keon Coleman. Unfortunately, I'll probably pick him up for no reason again after this. But I'm picking up Keon Coleman, or I'm dropping Keon Coleman. I'm picking up Chase McLaughlin. I feel like those Saints and Bucks games always tend to produce a lot of field goals for some reason. So I'm going to take him. And then that'll process on the 9th, which is tomorrow. And then on the 10th, I'm looking to add Kareem Hunt and drop Braylon Allen. Maybe a little bit of a bad move, but Kareem Hunt right now is RB1 until Pacheco gets back. So I don't know why you drop Kareem Hunt. I genuinely don't know why you drop Kareem Hunt. So I'm going to try to steal him. And, maybe I put him in over ETN at times. We'll have to wait and see, though, as long as I get him. I'm up in that waiver wire, though. So I'm now technically fifth in the waiver wire, I want to say now. I can just look. Yeah, I'm fifth in the waiver wire now because I jumped up from last place all the way to tied for 7th, which is kind of insane. I've also given up the least amount of points in this league by a solid almost 40 points, which is crazy.
Yeah, what was I gonna say? I haven't been too bad this season. I mean, I have over 600 points scored through 5 games. That's a pretty good average, I guess. 620 about. Um, I do have a lot of points scored against me. Third most in the league as of right now. No, fourth most. I lied. Guy in last is having it rough. I'm not gonna lie. 646 points against him. Not even that bad of a stat offensively. 557 points scored for him. He's like, let's see, what place is he?
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's fifth in points for him, but he's 12th overall, which is just very unlucky. So yeah,
So it says I only have a 14% chance to make playoffs. So, I mean, I guess time will tell. I feel like, though, if I win this week, I feel like I'm in a good position. I just need my players to go nuclear again, which I think Monroe will help that. Although, you know, I mean, like when your worst team, I think, is defense, that's a good week. Actually, yeah, my worst team is defense, but I mean, my wide receivers carried. They had Mooney and Moore had a combined like 60 points or over six, like almost 60 points. So yeah, keep cooking on the fantasy. We'll just have to wait and see what waiver wire transactions we end up getting. Moving on to our fun question. if you have one, please go because I've been traveling all day. I didn't think of one, so I gotta think of one up on the spot.
Okay, so we know how the Chiefs are like the NFL's favorite team. Um, Taylor Swift gets shown every game. Belichick, I don't know if you saw the clip, but he was not having it. Uh, he he was on the
Yeah, I don't blame Bill.
he was on the Manning podcast, or he was watching with the Mannings or whatever on their little stream, and every time came up, he was just so disappointed. So, what celebrity do you think would be the next Taylor Swift of the NFL? Like comes in, is shown at every game, and who do you think they're dating?
Dude, it has to be a female, obviously. Dude, I think it's Sydney Sweeney.
Okay.
I mean, for obvious reasons. And who is she dating? Dude, it's gonna be something. She's gonna be dating Josh Allen. Like, I
Hmm.
actually could see that happening. Like,
Okay.
that could be crazy.
That's valid, I guess. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, mine's a crazy take. All right, listen, I don't even know if this guy's still in the league anymore, but I'm taking Carl Nassib or whatever. It's a gay man in the NFL, openly gay player, and I'm taking I Show Speed. This guy would run up the ratings of the NFL so quick, it would be crazy. I mean, he'd be in every time there's not action in the game, they'd be showing speed. I mean, the ratings would be through the roof. The NFL would be
That's
loving that.
crazy. That is actually so crazy. So your question actually gave me an idea.
All right.
So Robert Saleh just got fired. We know that. But this can be legit. This can be troll. Right. Let's just say you're, let's just say for some reason you're the quarterback, or yeah, let's just say you're the quarterback and you get to pick the next head coach, but it has to be a celebrity. Who are you
Mm,
choosing?
okay. Huh. um, hmm. I don't know. Do you have an answer? I'm trying to think.
I've got, I've got a, in, I've got a very interesting answer. I'm gonna have to go with. Now I don't know if this guy knows anything about football, so I'm going with Morgan Wallen
Okay.
because hear me out. Ratings for that team are gonna go up. Merchandise for that team is gonna go up. Hey, they may not even know who the players are, but hey, why do you like this team, ma'am? Because Morgan Wallen's the head coach. Gigabrain, it's a Gigabrain marketing idea. I don't know if the guy knows anything about football, but that's just a genius marketing to just explode your market, your team, and get your ratings up.
Yeah, that's a interesting option there. Um, Mine might be more interesting. Um, this guy's somewhat considered the super fan for the Packers in the celebrity scene. And this guy is Lil Wayne. All right, he he has run out of the tunnel with the Packers before. So say I'm the starting QB for the Packers. All right, he knows the players, man. I mean, he runs out the tunnel like every 2 or 3 years. So he knows, the clubhouse. I mean, he's got the connections, and we could probably draw up some crazy plays with Lil Wayne. I'm not gonna lie. He writes all his lyrics off the top of his dome, freestyles all his songs. I mean, we might be making up play calls in the middle of the game. The defense doesn't even have film on us, bro. Like they got nothing to read. We'll be running some crazy plays that no one knows. So Lil Wayne's my pick. He definitely leading us to a Super Bowl.
Imagine if a celebrity led a team to a Super Bowl. That would actually be crazy. But you know, a celebrity can lead a team to a Super Bowl. In Madden NFL 25. This is not a sponsor, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay.
Anyways, though, guys, hey, we're gonna wrap up episode 6 of Midweek Meetings over here. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. Hopefully, I will be back at my setup starting with episode 7. You know, as long as my house doesn't get damaged or something catastrophic happens. So, should be back at my regular setup. But hey, for some reason, if I'm not, we'll be doing this probably this way again. So, we'll have to see. But anyways, if you guys are over on YouTube watching, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. Or feel free to check us out live every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on twitch.tv/KnockdownNico or twitch.tv/Pr3ssix. Anyways, though, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Excited for all the matchups for week 6. See what week 6 and everything brings. But that is that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Y'all have a good one. I'm going to see you guys next episode.
See ya.